I either had to reinvent the law firm or quit the law firm and go get a W-2 job, which I didn't want to do. I love running a law firm and being a boss and being an entrepreneur. But I also have to feed my family. I also have to take care of my employees, you know.
Hey, law firm owner, welcome to the Your Practice Mastered podcast. We're your hosts. I'm MPS.
And I'm Richard James. And MPS, it's not often that we get to see the results at the other end of the story, especially when somebody comes in and they invest in maybe our toolkit or consumed one of our books, and then they go off and do their thing, and we may or may not talk to them for a while. But today we get to speak with Luke Homen, who, started in our world by starting to consume some information and then went off and implemented this information, which is the most fun part for me, as well as you, MPS. And so today we're going to get to have a fun conversation with Luke about what he did, see his journey, and maybe give some nuggets about the things that were able to help him change the direction of his firm. So Luke, thanks for being here today.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I've been looking forward to this.
Nice.
We're looking forward to having you here. And so, Luke, to break the ice for everyone a little bit, what's something that maybe not everyone knows about you?
Okay, so I really like sports, but I've stopped watching sports on TV. What I really like is reading about sports, I've discovered. And my favorite part, I don't actually watch basketball, but I love reading basketball stories about the salary cap and how they're trading. And it's kind of like that general manager type approach, which is similar to running a law firm. It's what's the story behind the sports? And I found that that's my favorite thing about sports now is reading, I don't know, almost that like, how are they manipulating the system to put the players on the team who can hit the home run or shoot the three-point basket or something. So
You're a Moneyball fan.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's what I really like.
That's great. By the way, I think somebody is going to soon come and take my man card away because I used to consume every sport all the time. I watched probably 160 of the 162 Yankee games as a young kid, and I'd watch every NFL game in Penn State College. And like 2 weekends ago, we were home. Like I wasn't doing anything. And obviously the NFL is on when we're recording this right now. And I didn't watch a single game. I watched rom-coms with my wife. I'm like, what's wrong with me? And I think what happened for me is I got so emotionally attached and so emotionally involved in these games, and I wasn't betting on them. Not that I have anything wrong with that. In North Carolina, we can do that legally now, but I wasn't. But I was really emotionally invested. And then I realized, like, as upset as I got about this, nobody was coming to me on Tuesday and writing me a check for my involvement or even giving me a pat on the back for saying, thanks for being such a great fan. And all it was doing was wrecking me. So I don't know, somewhere along the line, I've started to lose my zip for it, but I am waiting for the man card police to show up at my door and go, give it to me. You've lost it.
No, I don't know about that far. I'm the complete opposite. Sundays, Thursday night football, I'm already ready to go tonight. Sundays, I'm watching football all day, and Mondays, I love the fall for that. 3 nights a week, I've got something on the calendar that I get to do, so I look forward to it.
But your bride would rather watch a football game probably than a rom-com, right?
This is true. Yeah. She would.
We have 3 small children, and so we watch like Bluey and Daniel Tiger, and that's what's on our TV, not rom-coms or sports, just Bluey.
Understandable. Understandable. Well, Luke, I want to learn a little bit more about the journey. So from a high level, the high strokes, walk us through your journey as an entrepreneurial law firm owner.
Yeah, so I've been an attorney for about 10 years, decided to start my own law firm, and things were going pretty well. And then COVID hit, and as a bankruptcy attorney, it just wrecked it, right? And so I really had to start rethinking and looking deep into everything. As a bankruptcy attorney, you've got your Chapter 13 income that's normally rolling in, and then you've got Chapter 7 income coming in, right? Well, all the old Chapter 13 income dried up, and now I had to start taking a hard look at everything and realized, well, first off, there aren't as many leads out there. So we really need to batten down the hatches and examine everything. And I started realizing what I was doing wasn't working at all. And what I was doing was based on looking around at other attorneys and things that I'd learned at various, seminars, and it wasn't working. And so I needed to try and find some answers on, I want to be able to deliver a really high quality bankruptcy service, but I also need to not lose money. How do I help people? You can't help people if you're losing money. And so I figured there had to be a better way. There had to be another way to rethink what I'm doing to still meet those goals, help people get out of debt and, not lose money. Those aren't big goals, but that was at the time all I was trying. It was like, how do I do this?
Well, that makes sense. There's many different types of laws we know, and bankruptcy is one of those practice areas that is very mission driven, right, in many ways. And it is one of those practice areas that it's extremely rewarding because you get instant gratification like every 6 months, right?
Right,
And
absolutely.
so, yeah, I love it. Obviously, I cut my teeth building a bankruptcy firm. So for me, it's near and dear to my heart. I understand it, and I know what it's like to work with those clients, the good ones and the bad ones.
Right.
And so, I would say that the goal that you had was admirable. But like you said, my mentor used to call it like you were paying attention to industry incest, right? Like it was like
Right.
the guys, everybody was learning from each other and nobody was very good at it, right? And it was just getting a copy of a copy of a copy and everybody's getting worse. And so, what was that moment that flipped the switch for you that gave you some information?
Well, all right. So I got your book. This is
Okay.
the favorite. And I read it, and there's a part in the book where you're talking to the fictional attorney, and you point out, look, most attorneys are losing money on every single Chapter 7 they file. And I read that sentence, and it just blew my mind because I started thinking about it, and I'm like, it is so true. And there's always going to be some attorney who's charging rock bottom prices and doing terrible lawyering, right? There's going to be that guy. But I started looking around and realizing even the good attorneys that I looked up to, they're losing money on every 7. And I can't do that, right? And so that was a game changing moment of, okay, there's got to be a way that I can, we can make our process more efficient. That's always what I've been trying to do. Let's make it more efficient.
Right.
But how do we make this work better? But also, I need to charge more money because we're delivering good quality services. I deserve it. We're worth it. But if I don't charge enough money to cover my overhead, I'm not going to still be in business very much longer.
By the way, thank you for the shout out on the book, but you had to implement the changes, and so
Right.
you deserve the credit. That book was indeed a labor of love. It was the first fiction book I had ever written, and I'd written a bunch of other advice books, and the fiction book was by far the most difficult challenge I've had as a business owner and author. I hired a professional writer to critique it, and his first opening line was, "Well, you officially broke every rule in fiction writing." I'm like, oh, okay. Thanks. So, yeah, I felt really, really good about myself in the first 6 months of writing that book. Anyway, thank you for reading it. And I'm glad for you because I had to pick a practice area to be the focus of the character. And it happened to be bankruptcy, as I said, because it was near and dear to me. And as a bankruptcy attorney, it probably related to you just a little bit more. I think it's safe to say, though, that the lessons that were learned for the bankruptcy attorney and for you are applicable to other practice areas. I don't know if you have.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's how do I take stock of what it actually costs to produce this legal service and not just I'll price it based on what Joe down the street is charging.
MPS, that's huge. Like, if they can make that leap and make that connection, I think that's really important. Yeah.
It's a massive leap, and it's a completely different paradigm of looking at it. But I'm curious, so you identified what it costs you for a bankruptcy to get it out the door, and you recognized you needed to raise your fees a little bit. Was that easy for you? Did you just do it like one day you just came up with a new price, or was it hard for you to
It's
make?
been a process. It
Yeah.
really has. Because on the one hand, you want to be able to help the people, right? And so one of the things that we started doing to really meet that goal, how do we help people but also charge an appropriate price? And I think this came from one of your training manuals, but we came up with an upcharge list, right? Here are 10 or 12 or 14 factors where, okay, this factor means it's going to take a lot more staff time. All right, that's irritating, but staff time costs less money. Here's a factor that costs a lot more attorney time. So develop a list, and this will be different wherever you practice because things work differently, but develop a list. Okay, this is my base price that I'm comfortable with, mission driven, charging somebody that can afford it. But at the same time, no matter how much I love that client, if they've got some of these upcharge factors, they need to pay more. And so first off, I had to raise even the lowest price, but then I've gotten a lot more comfortable with let's have these upcharge factors. And as I've reviewed the cases, especially the messy ones, okay, that case went very badly, but we did spot that at intake. We charged the right upcharge factor, and now we still made money on the case. The client got a successful outcome. And even though everybody in the law firm knew that client's name, because it was a lot, right? It was still a good case and a good outcome because we had those upcharge factors in place to have a case specific price. And that's one of the things that drives me crazy in bankruptcy, right? Is you have the guy, and I just was looking at a case the other day, another attorney did it, where it's a tremendously complex case. The guy's earning $9,000 a month, and the attorney charged $1,250. And I know the only reason he charged him $1,250 is because it probably says on the door, all bankruptcies, $1,250. And that's a colossal mistake. Like when you're doing that, you're basically subsidizing your practice on the low income clients because those cases are easy and the rich clients are getting a bankruptcy that's far cheaper than is appropriate.
As a bankruptcy attorney evangelist, I wish every trustee thought like you, FYI, because they don't. You'd be the horror stories I have heard. I too had been disgouged when I built the firm. I wasn't disgouged,
Sure.
It wasn't my bar license, but
Right.
when I built the firm in Phoenix, the trustee said, "No, you charge too much," and I'm like, I didn't even know that was a thing. So we learned our limits, right? But
Sure.
what you spoke about, and this is a writer downer. You want to talk about a nugget that you just gave everybody? Cafeteria pricing. That's what we call it, right?
Yeah.
This idea that, oh, do you want a piece of key lime pie with that? Do you want extra fries with that? Whatever, and you could just take it off the shelf. And sometimes it's choice, but oftentimes in a case, they really don't have a choice. This has to be done this way,
Yeah.
and so this work is going to cost this much. And and they say, well, somebody else might charge me less. Well, that may or may not be the case, but at the end of the day, you're still going to have to do all these things. And if they don't charge you the right amount, you're not going to be able to get the service you want, just simply because they're going to be too busy serving everybody with a skeleton staff. And the other thing I would say is attorneys always think, oh, but so-and-so down the road charges $1,200
Right.
for the same case. And they think that everybody knows that.
Yeah.
The reality is they have no idea what so-and-so
Yeah.
charges most of the time. Sometimes you get the price shopper and you're the last
Right.
call on the rung. That happens, but that's even beatable. But most of the time they called you because you were the first number on Google or whatever,
Yeah.
and they called you and you're the first person to get them in the door, and you met with them and you closed the deal, and they had no idea that there was somebody that would charge $1,200 for less quality service. But every lawyer listening to this, I know for a fact, they have all had that client that they didn't charge enough for, and as you said, everybody in their office knows that client's name
Yeah.
because they've called 12 times yesterday, right?
Yeah.
And they said, I called you 12 times yesterday. Yes, but calling every other phone number in our firm every other minute doesn't really count, right? It's not like we didn't call you back. It's that you just decided to call 12 times in 12 minutes, right? And that crazy clients happen.
Right.
And my mentor told me, don't let the bad ones ruin it for the good ones, right?
Right. But also, if you're charging enough to have a little bit of a cushion, then when a case does turn south, you haven't just lost the ability to pay rent because you weren't losing money on every other case.
Yeah.
You're
But
totally
that
right.
cafeteria style MPS is a nice way for an attorney to be able to raise prices without feeling like they've got to just raise their prices. Do you agree?
It is. Yeah, absolutely is. And like you said, it's traditionally things that a prospect that's going to move forward with some of those needs it. And so it's a nice way to build that in. And you also said, Luke, something, and I don't want to just gloss over this either. You've got to be profitable to help clients, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And not being profitable means as a firm, you're only going to be in existence for so long because at some point that well is going to run dry. And so I appreciate you for coming in with that mindset. It's a good mindset, allows us to deliver a better quality service. But although the pricing is very, very tactical, I want to go to the systems a little bit. So when you were in that period of trying to figure things out with the firm, what was one of the first systems you identified really needed to be solved?
Okay. So I had two staffers in place who answered the phone. Travis, his job was new clients, and Patsy, her job was existing clients. And I had the phone system set up where if you're a new client, you hit Patsy, but if Patsy's busy, you roll to Travis. And then I had Travis, new clients, but if he's busy, you roll over to Patsy. But what would end up happening is too often they were answering each other's phone calls.
Right.
And so one of that first simple fixes was I got an outside answering service So if Travis is busy, it rolls over to the answering service. If Patsy's busy, it rolls over to the answering service. And now Travis is never stuck on Patsy's calls, and Patsy's never stuck on Travis's calls. And just that simple fix of making the phone calls come to the right person who's doing the right job and not overlapping was really huge.
Yeah, we call that bifurcating the calls, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and you, genius that you picked up on this, whether you got it on your own, whether you got it out of our materials, it doesn't matter, but you figured out that let's not put a square peg into a round hole per se, right? Let's have the right person answer the phone all the time. And so we can have a person who's a specialist at converting leads into appointments, and we can train the answering service on the back side to make sure they follow some sort of script to not just take a message and actually build rapport and maybe even schedule the appointment for you, and they can be his backup. And then let's have somebody who's an expert at understanding what questions they have to answer for clients, answer those questions, so that we're not having a salesperson try to answer questions they have no business answering, which means they either have to not answer them and get back to them or put them on hold, or all the things that clients don't want. And so now we ruin our customer service and we ruin our conversion. I suspect what you found from this is your client satisfaction went up, which meant you were probably able to file cases faster because you got things from your clients at a faster pace, and your set rate, which is how we measure the percentage of leads that you set, actually went up. Is that an accurate statement?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And so mechanically, we gave the answering service the ability to calendar the next phone call on Travis's calendar. And that phone call back might even be 30 minutes later, but it blocked it on his calendar. So now Travis and the client are able to connect, and they're not playing phone tag, and Patsy's not busy trying to connect Travis. And all of a sudden, everything just went so much more smoothly by just that logistical issue of where do the phone calls go?
What a cool feeling.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really
I love it.
cool.
Like, all these systems building stuff, and then you get to look and see that things work. It's amazing.
Like I said, we don't often get to, a lot of times, obviously there's clients we work with for years, and I watch their journey. You're one of those clients, and we have many of them that, invested in a product and took it and learned it on their own, a DIY kind of thing. And I never know what's going to happen necessarily. And it's such a joy to hear what you've done. It's so exciting. And by the way, this isn't me taking credit for giving you the information, because you were hungry for information, and you learned it from me, and now you've plugged into other sources as well. So you're always growing now as an entrepreneur, and you're learning to look for that next little secret that's going to make the hinge work a little better. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. If we can make it flow better, then it works better for the client. It works better for the staff. Now I can make sure I've got highly talented staff, and I've got client satisfaction, and I'm not losing sleep because I can't pay rent. It's so much winning.
Well, that was a perfect segue actually into my question, which is, believe it or not, for as many people as there are like you, Luke, that actually invest in information or resources, take it and implement it, there's equally the other side of that invest in resources and do nothing with it. So my question for you is, what motivated you to actually take it and implement it?
Well, the biggest thing was the absolute reality of I am about to become a crushing failure, right? I love what I do. I love helping people get out of debt, right? But my family also needs me to be able to pay the mortgage and buy the groceries. And I got to be able to do those things. I got to be able to meet my professional goals of helping people get out of debt. But I was on the verge of, I either had to reinvent the law firm or quit the law firm and go get a W-2 job, which I didn't want to do. I love running a law firm and being a boss and being an entrepreneur. But I also have to feed my family. I also have to take care of my employees.
I have a question. You said the word entrepreneur. What's the backstory? I know it was 10 years ago, but was your mom and dad an entrepreneur?
Okay, so my dad's actually a workers' comp attorney in California. I'm from California. I actually worked for my dad for 5 years. My dad's the kind of attorney where it's him and a secretary, right? And so it's so much more of a traditional law offices of Mark Homen, right? Yeah. And I worked for him, and on the one hand, lots of great memories working for your dad, right? Yeah. On the other hand, I think I always saw the practice of law as more of a business. Now, okay, Dad, how do we build this out? How do we get some advertising? How do we systematize these things? And he's much more of a Well, it's me and the secretary, and the cases come in the door, and we work the cases, right? And so I think it was that just like, this is not the way, right? I want to have a successful business.
Yeah.
And so then I moved to Oklahoma and I worked for a bankruptcy attorney, discovered I loved it, but I did everything, from intake to doc collection to petition prep to court appearances. And as I was doing it, I kept thinking, we've got to be able to systematize this. We've got to have a documents collection person. We've got to have and I think bankruptcy just lends itself to, you have to have systems in order to have a profitable practice. And the more I was doing these cases, the more I was thinking, okay, how would I build this out? How would I develop a person, a staff, a machine? I don't want clients to feel like it's a machine, but we want the cases to come through smoothly and beautifully and with all the parts assembled correctly so we get the right outcome.
Yeah, that idea that we can, the word mill is a bad word in the bankruptcy world, right?
No, it's mill.
But can we bring clients in at volume, serve them well, make it so that our crew, our staff feels good and enjoys their job, and allow the company to be profitable and the owner of the company to reap some rewards of that? And the answer is yes.
Right.
MPS, we've seen that now over and over, but MPS, there's also many that don't believe that too, yeah?
Yeah, of course. There's going to be both segments. And one of the things that you said, which already kind of tipped the hat as to why you did implement, is you just view things a little differently. So you actually viewed it as a business. And that's very, very rare for attorneys. And so do you feel that mindset you were born with that mindset, or did you just adapt and adopt that over time?
I think I just adopted it over time. As I was deciding to start my own law firm, kind of looked around at what was out there, and there's some very talented attorneys in town, right? But those guys have a small firm. They're only taking a couple cases. And then there was a mega firm. There was a mill where it filed a ton of cases at a very low quality level. And I just thought to myself, I was like, there's got to be a way to hit high quality and more than 5 cases a month, because there's so many people out there who need high quality representation, and that need is just not being met. So how do we build it? There's got to be a way.
Yeah. But you didn't inherently know the way, so you had to go find it. You had to go find it.
Yeah.
And now it's fun to watch you on this journey now.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, just as a throw-out question, MPS was asking some questions around other topics, and as we dive into the phones, and you're using non-attorney salesperson, I know you shared with us off camera. Do you use scripts and structures on your phone room and on your consult room?
Yeah, we have a lot of structure. So one of the things I think you mentioned earlier was somebody calling and just shopping around for the lowest price, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things my staff is trained to say is, well, we can't just quote you a price right now because we don't know anything about you, and every case is different. You're a beautiful snowflake. They don't say that part, but you are, right? And since you're a snowflake, you're different than the next snowflake. And so how do we quote you a price that's specific to you? Well, let us set you up in our process. Let my non-attorney salesperson just learn about your specific situation. And then once we learn about you, we can tell you what it'll cost, and then we have an attorney talk to you at the end so that we're complying with all of our bankruptcy code requirements. But yeah, and I've got an 8-page set of questions that the paralegal will be asking them over the phone. And so it's very process driven, but it needs to be, because as you're going through those 8 pages, right, there could be something on page 6 that changes what the attorney is going to have to tell you about page 1. But until you make it through all of their facts, you can't quote them a price. You can't give them legal advice. And so I just think it's so important. Let's gather all the information that we can about this person, and then we can say, hey, here's what we think. We think bankruptcy is a good fit, and we think it'll cost you this much because your case involves this level of complexity. And if you're what I like to call a simple 7, right, that's great. That means we can give you our lowest possible price because it's going to go smoothly and easily and simple.
Yeah, that's great.
It's very, very important. Structures and actually essential. Script structures essential. Luke, it's fun to watch. You actually take material, implement it, and get to reap the rewards of what you've implemented. That's exciting. But equally, I'm curious, what's exciting? What's got you fired up and excited today? Could be business, could be personal, could be both.
Yeah, so the biggest thing in our bankruptcy world right now that's just cutting edge is the ability to discharge student loans in bankruptcy, right? And so for years, I've just had to tell clients, well, unless you're a paraplegic and you'll never work again and you want to pay me like $20,000, there's nothing we can do about student loans, right? And now the world's changed and all of a sudden we can discharge student loans and it's amazing. Most recently, we discharged $105,000 of student loan debt for a guy who he went to school and he got a master's degree and it was useless, right? You know, back home in California where I grew up, maybe you went to the San Francisco Academy of Art and you graduated and you were a terrible artist. You got a degree, but you can't make money in it. And now you owe six figures and you're working and earning $30,000 a year. Right. You know, the student loan debt crisis in our country is huge and it's real. And now all of a sudden we have an actual tool to deal with it and deliver tremendous value for clients. And I'm super fired up about it.
Yeah, you know, I want to be careful because there might be somebody listening that's in another practice area and thinks the grass is greener in bankruptcy, and so they should go open a bankruptcy firm. And while that may be, you may be successful doing it, as long as you have a law license, most practices of law can be wildly successful, and you should probably stick with what you're most passionate about, not where you think that we can make the most money or most opportunity is. But I will say, in the bankruptcy world, there is, you know, you guys suffered a pretty decent drought as business owners. Though some of you, like yourself, figured out how to make it work through those times. We have many clients that still grew through those times, but many of the bankruptcy attorneys had gone through this drought. You're on an upswing, not just because the market is changing, and you know we're going to get closer to recessionary times again. Probably there's more debt now than there is savings again, and because there's new opportunities to serve this student loan debt. That in and of itself, for those that are out there, maybe there's a non-lawyer out here listening to this and they've got student loan debt and they're like, geez, I'm underneath all this debt. I didn't know that was possible. Yeah. That's the kind of message you're going to be able to get out there now. And that's actually really exciting because you are going to be able to help a tremendous amount of people that are upside down. Sure, there was some choices made, but everybody deserves a fresh start. And if you can't get out from underneath that student loan debt, it's sometimes really hard to get that fresh start.
Yeah, and you think about it, so you're 17, 18, 19 years old, and you're signing up for $100,000 of debt that's going to follow you for the rest of your life.
Right.
On the other hand, if you decided to be a big rig trucker and you bought yourself a big rig and you failed, you can file a bankruptcy. Yeah. But the guy who did it the right way and went to college and couldn't make a living doing, I don't know, underwater basket weaving or whatever thing you signed up for as an 18-year-old, that's going to follow you for the rest of your life? That doesn't make sense to me.
That's a message, my friend, that needs to be told over and over again. I can't wait to watch you grow and help more people with that message alone. That is something to be excited about. Congratulations.
Thanks.
It sure is. Absolutely. And Luke, just want to take the time to thank you for being on today. This was an excellent episode. A lot of great insights, a lot of tactics that are extremely vital to each firm's success. So I appreciate you sharing that. And to the law firm owners listening, thank you. Thank you for investing your time and being here. Make sure to hit that subscribe or follow button depending on where you're listening or watching. Turn those bell notifications on so you don't miss content like this. And show Luke some love down in the comments below because what an excellent episode this was. Luke, thank you.
Well, no, thanks, guys. This has been a real privilege.
Yeah, Luke, honestly, I said it earlier, I said it in the middle, and I'll say it again. It is what a pleasure it is for me to be able to watch what you've done with the information, some of it you've learned from us, and you were able to apply into your practice and grow from where you were to where you are now, make it through one of the darkest times as far as a business owner is concerned in the bankruptcy world, and come out the other side ahead of most and still thriving and breaking records every month. It's a real pleasure to talk to you. It was also a joy for me to be able to witness what you did. Thank you so much for sharing today.
Well, thanks, guys. I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's the pod.